Not everyone understands this, but those who do are transformed forever. Bruce Lee was more than just a martial artist. He was a visionary, a master of the mind, and a living example of what Neville Goddard called the power of assumption. He once said, "Be like water." These three simple words hold a truth that can change your life. Water is formless, yet it takes the shape of whatever contains it. Likewise, your mind shapes itself to whatever you believe. If you grasp this, you will realize that your reality is not fixed. It is fluid, responding to the thoughts and assumptions you entertain. Bruce Lee understood what few dare to believe. Your limits are illusions. The barriers you see are not real. They are simply the reflection of an untrained imagination. When you discipline your mind, when you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you become un. Let me show you how his wisdom aligns perfectly with the greatest secret of all, the secret of consciousness. Bruce Lee's words, "Be like water," are often repeated but rarely understood in their full depth. To most, it sounds like simple advice to remain flexible. But in truth, it is one of the most profound teachings on the nature of reality, aligning perfectly with Neville Goddard's revelations about consciousness and creation. Water does not resist, it flows. It does not struggle against obstacles, it moves around them or shapes them over time. Water takes the form of whatever contains it, whether a cup, a riverbed, or an ocean's expanse. In the same way, your consciousness must become fluid, taking the shape of your assumptions. If you rigidly hold on to an old identity, resisting change, you remain trapped in the limitations of the past. But when you allow yourself to assume a new state, one that aligns with your highest desire, you become like water, flowing effortlessly into the life you were meant to live. Bruce Lee understood that life is not about forcing or struggling, but about moving in harmony with what is already present in consciousness. Most people try to fight the conditions they dislike, unaware that they are only reinforcing them. If you push against a rock in a stream, you feel resistance. But if you move around it, the obstacle ceases to exist. This is how reality works. Struggle creates more struggle. Resistance amplifies what you resist. But when you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you cease to fight, and your world begins to shift to reflect your inner state. Lee did not simply master martial arts, he mastered himself. He trained his mind as much as he trained his body, understanding that the greatest battles are won not with brute force, but with clarity and precision of movement, both physical and mental. In the same way, Neville Goddard taught that our external world is simply a reflection of our inner world. If you fight the outer world, you are fighting a mere shadow. True power comes from adjusting the source, your consciousness. This is where most people falter. They remain rigid, clinging to old beliefs, fearful of stepping into the unknown. They are like ice, frozen in place, refusing to flow. But the truth is that rigidity is weakness, not strength. Water survives because it adapts. When life shifts, it does not shatter. It changes course and continues. Your mind must do the same. You must stop seeing yourself as a fixed being with limitations and instead recognize that you are fluid consciousness, able to shape yourself into anything you assume to be true. Neville taught that imagining creates reality. If you want to change your world, you must first change yourself. But that change cannot be superficial. It must be complete. You must assume the state of your desire as naturally as water assumes the shape of its container. The mistake many make is trying to become something new while still identifying with the old. They try to manifest wealth while feeling poor, to attract love while feeling unworthy, to claim power while this is like expecting water to take the shape of a cup while insisting it remains a solid block of ice. It cannot happen. You must melt the old state entirely and allow yourself to flow into the new. Bruce Lee's mastery came from his ability to embody the principle of water, not only in combat but in life. He saw no separation between mind and body, between thought and action. He became whatever he assumed himself to be. This is the key to transformation. If you wish to change your reality, you must not force it or struggle against what is. Instead, let go. Assume the state you desire with such certainty that it becomes your natural form. Do not fight circumstances. Flow through them, knowing they must reshape themselves to reflect your assumption. Be like water, and nothing will stand in your way. Bruce Lee once said, if you always put limits on what you can do, it will spread into your work and life. There are no limits, there are only plateaus, and you must not stay there, you must go beyond them. These words carry a truth that many never grasp. The only real limits in life are the ones we accept as real. This is exactly what Neville Goddard taught. Our assumptions create our world, and if we assume limitation, we remain trapped within it. But if we assume freedom, success, and infinite possibility, then life itself must conform to that belief. Most people live their lives trapped in an invisible prison, never realizing that the bars are made of their own assumptions. They say, I can't do this, I'm not capable, that kind of success isn't meant for someone like me. And so their world reflects these beliefs perfectly. They struggle, they face obstacles, and they see every difficulty as proof that their limitations are real. But the truth is, their mind is simply feeding them evidence of what they have already assumed to be true. If they shifted their belief, their reality would shift as well. Bruce Lee understood this at the deepest level. He knew that the body follows the mind, that skill and ability are not fixed traits, but fluid states that can be expanded by changing one's perception. He never saw himself as limited, even when others doubted him. When he was told that an Asian actor could never succeed in Hollywood, he refused to accept it. Instead, he saw himself as already successful, already breaking barriers, already living the reality he desired. He mentally lived in that state before the world had any proof of it. This is exactly what Neville Goddard taught. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and reality must bend to that assumption. This is why limitations are an illusion. They are not real in themselves. They are only real to the person who accepts them. The moment you reject the idea of limits, they disappear. The moment you assume yourself to be capable, powerful, and destined for greatness, life has no choice but to arrange itself to match that assumption. This is not wishful thinking. It is the law of consciousness. The world outside is simply a reflection of what you hold within. If you assume struggle, you will find struggle. If you assume ease, doors will open effortlessly. Most people misunderstand this because they wait for evidence before they believe. They say, I will believe in my success when I see proof. But that is backward thinking. Bruce Lee did not wait for Hollywood to recognize him before he saw himself as a star. He assumed it first. And then reality caught up. Neville Goddard taught that belief is the bridge. You must cross that bridge in imagination before you see the manifestation in the physical world. The mind does not work based on what is, it works based on what is assumed to be. If you assume limitation, that is all you will ever experience. If you assume infinite possibility, life itself will reshape to match that vision. Every time you tell yourself, I can't, you are reinforcing an illusion. Every time you look at circumstances as proof that you are stuck, you are only feeding that assumption and keeping yourself trapped. The only way to break free is to assume something new, to take on the state of being limitless before there is any physical evidence of it. This is the way reality works. You are not bound by past failures, by external circumstances, or by the doubts of others. You are bound only by your own assumptions. And the moment you assume that there are no limits, you will see that there never were any to begin with. The mind is the only real battleground. You win there, you win everywhere. Bruce Lee understood something that few ever grasp. Before the world recognizes you as great, you must already recognize yourself as great. He did not wait for others to affirm his potential. He lived as if it was already true. This is exactly what Neville Goddard taught: the power of assumption, the ability to live in the end result before any physical proof exists. What you consistently assume to be real becomes real. Your present circumstances do not matter. What matters is the state you occupy in your imagination. Bruce Lee did not see himself as an aspiring martial artist or an actor hoping to make it in Hollywood. He saw himself as a global icon long before the world acknowledged him as one. He did not merely train his body, he trained his mind to dwell in the reality he desired. He wrote a letter to himself in 1969 stating that by 1970 he would be the highest paid Asian actor in America, and that success would come to him effortlessly. This was not a wish, it was an assumption. And because he assumed it to be true, reality had no choice but to bring it to pass. This is what Neville called living in the end. Most people fail to manifest their desires because they live in contradiction. They want success, but still think like someone struggling. They desire wealth, but continue identifying as someone who lacks. They wish for love, but continue carrying the identity of someone who is unworthy. They do not realize that their external world is simply a reflection of their internal assumptions. Bruce Lee understood that to become something, he had to first be it in consciousness. He lived as though his success was already secured, and through this unwavering belief, he shaped his reality accordingly. This is the principle most never grasp. They believe they must first see change before they believe in it. But Bruce Lee knew better. He did not wait for Hollywood to validate him. He validated himself. He acted, spoke, and carried himself as a legend long before he was recognized as one. He did not seek permission. He did not need proof. He assumed his greatness before the world could see it. And in doing so, he forced the world to align with his assumption. This is how reality bends to consciousness. Many people sabotage their desires because they allow doubt to creep in. They question whether they are worthy, whether they are capable, whether things will work out. But Neville taught that doubt is simply the absence of assuming the state. If you were already in possession of what you desired, you would not doubt. It would feel natural. Bruce Lee carried himself with an effortless confidence, not because he was arrogant, but because he had already stepped into his future self. He lived in that assumption so completely that success became inevitable. The mistake most make is waiting for conditions to change before they change their mindset. They wait for financial success before they feel wealthy. They wait for recognition before they feel accomplished. They wait for love before they feel loved. But this is the reverse of how creation works. The outside world is only a reflection of the inner state. Bruce Lee never waited. He became what he desired internally, and the world reshaped itself to match that assumption. This is why imagination is the key to everything. If you can see yourself as already possessing what you desire, and if you persist in that assumption regardless of what your senses tell you, then it must become reality. Bruce Lee did not hope to succeed. He knew he would because he had already lived it in his mind. This is how all great creators operate. They do not chase success, they embody it. They do not wish for change, they assume it. And by doing so, they bend reality to their will. Bruce Lee was not just a master of physical discipline, he was a master of mental discipline. He understood that before the body can move with precision, the mind must be clear. Before any action can be effective, thought must be directed with purpose. This is the essence of Neville Goddard's teaching. Control your imagination, and you control your world. The mind is the only battleground, and those who fail to discipline it remain prisoners of their own chaotic thoughts. Most people live reactively, allowing circumstances to dictate their emotions, thoughts, and ultimately their actions. They believe they must see change before they can feel successful. They let external conditions shape their inner world instead of realizing that it is their inner world shaping their external conditions. Bruce Lee refused to live this way. He knew that mastery over life comes only through mastery over thought. He disciplined his mind with the same intensity that he trained his body. He did not allow doubt to take root. He did not entertain failure as an option. He maintained complete control over his state of being, and through that, he shaped his destiny. Bruce once said, "As you think, so shall you become." This is not just philosophy, this is law. Whatever occupies your mind most consistently will manifest in your reality. Neville Goddard taught that every person lives in a state, a chosen mental reality, and the state you dwell in determines your experience. Most people do not choose their state consciously. They let the world dictate their thoughts, and as a result, they remain trapped in cycles of limitation. But Bruce Lee understood that the mind, like the body, could be trained. He refused to allow himself to dwell in weakness, negativity, or fear. He chose his state deliberately, assuming the identity of the man he wished to be long before the world saw it. This is where true discipline begins, not in forcing external action, but in training the mind to remain fixed in a state of certainty. Bruce Lee never entertained the idea that he would fail. He did not allow the doubts of others to influence his vision, even when Hollywood rejected him. When people told him he would never succeed, he did not waver. He remained firm in his belief because he had already lived his success in his imagination. He had already seen himself achieving greatness, and he refused to occupy any other mental state. This is what Neville called persistence in assumption. Most people give up too soon, letting outside circumstances shape their belief. But the ones who persist, the ones who hold their inner vision unwaveringly, always see it come to pass.